Welcome back to another episode of Queens Behind the Scenes, where we empower queens to lead, transform, and shine, where we hope to provide strategies that help you thrive in work and in life. Today, I have an absolute trailblazer with me. She's a Harvard MBA, a mindfulness expert, and the author of Black People Breathe. But trust me, what she is teaching is for everybody. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stressed, or just one coffee away from quitting your job, this episode is for you. Zee Clarke is here to show us how breathwork, mindfulness, and resilience can change the game in our careers. Zee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. I remember the first time we talked, I just felt something kindred about you. And then finding out your journey, you're so interesting. You're so amazing. But before we get started with the magic, let's rewind just a little bit. Your journey from the corporate world to becoming a mindfulness expert is pretty fascinating from when we talked before. So can you walk us through what led you to make this transition?
Yeah. So I did all the things that everybody said you needed to do to be successful. I was checking those boxes, right?
All the boxes.
Starting from, when you're little, you got to get the good grades, right? Then you got to get into a good college. So I went to Harvard for undergrad, studied economics. I started my career in financial services in New York City, Citigroup, Amex. I was like, got to get the brands on my resume. That is what we need to do, right? Overachieve, right?
Right.
And then I went back to Harvard for business school. I got my MBA. I moved to Silicon Valley. I was a management consultant doing strategy consulting for tech companies and biotech companies. And then I went into industry. So I worked for tech companies, big companies like Yahoo, back in the day. Not going to say how old I am. But also startups in Silicon Valley. And during all of that time, I was usually the only. And that means a lot of different things to different people. For me, let's start with being the only woman in the room. That is a thing in certain industries, tech, financial services, and many others. And you get treated a certain way. You get overlooked on a regular basis. You don't get the credit that you deserve. And you see, especially in tech, young white males, I'm talking in their 20s, barely any experience, just getting promoted, yet I'm the one doing the work. Mm-hmm. And so I was getting frustrated. I was getting beat down, and people would say things to me that questioned my competence. Things like, hey, are you the new diversity hire? And I'm like, hold the phone. I am a VP, period.
Right.
Period. And so when people say things like that, for me, that's just the fire. That's like, okay, bet. I'm going to work harder. I will work nights. I will work weekends. And I'm going to prove to all of you that, yes, I do deserve to be here. And that is what I did. And let me tell you what was sacrificed: my well-being. And I didn't even realize it. So I got to the point where I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. Every day I would wake up being like, today's the day I'm going to get fired. Today's the day this terrible thing's going to happen. And that just didn't feel good. And suddenly I was getting sick all the time because, your mental health is connected to your physical health. And I grew up in a household where if I said mental health to my parents, they would have laughed in my face and said, go to school, get your work done. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, ain't nobody got time for that.
And so when my doctors told me that my body was being affected, when my doctors said, you need to do something about your stress levels because this is not sustainable for your health, that's when I took it seriously. So that was the beginning of my mindfulness journey, because I finally put myself first and I quit my job, which was one of the scariest things I have ever done, because financial security is something that I have lots of childhood trauma.
Same. I do too. Same. I have lots of that too. And so I'm always scared that I'm it's going to be depleted or something.
Yes.
I'm not going to eat or something. Totally.
Why do I have this fear that I'm going to be homeless?
Me too. I'm always all the time. I'm always I think that's why I work to the point where I get sick, right? I'm like, oh, I gotta, yeah.
Yes. And so, but I knew that I needed to take care of myself. I could not be in that position anymore. So I quit. I went to India. A lot of people were like, Z has lost her mind. But I got deeper into my meditation practice. I got my yoga teacher training certification over there. I became a sound healer with Tibetan singing bowls over there. Yes, you know sound healing?
Of course, because I'm yoga certified too. So
Okay.
I did my teaching certification in 2023.
Yes. And breath work was the number one thing that I learned over there, because when I came back to corporate, because I took 2 years off. I called
And then you came back.
I went back to corporate because finances are real. We just talked about being scared of being homeless, right? The fact that I got time off in the beginning, right? So I got another corporate job, and corporate had not changed. The people had not changed.
No.
The way Black women are treated did not change. And around the time of 2020, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, when you are the only Black woman in leadership, and
I know.
so you got to do the most. They're like, suddenly you have a second job in DEI.
Yeah. Like that you never signed up for that. Like, and all of a sudden you're one data point speaking for the entire race of Black people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And so people were acting a fool. People were saying things that were even more offensive than normally. And my breathing practices got me through it. My breathing practices helped me to be my best self when talking to people that would say things that were offensive or ignorant, or do things that were offensive or ignorant. And that's when I realized that these practices that I learned in India could be extremely helpful in everyday life, the stuff that we deal with just walking down the street, but also at work. So that is kind of my journey into, okay, I went deep into self-care. And let me tell you, in India, I had never felt better in my entire life. I didn't realize my shoulders were up to my ears, just by default. I woke up like, I woke up like this. I woke up like this.
And it's so funny you say that, because that is like, I am definitely kind of going through some of these transitions. We talked about this before, and it is so true. Like, my shoulders are the same way. I got a massage a couple weeks ago, and they were like, "Are you okay?" Like, I was like, "I think so. Is something wrong with my shoulders?" She was like, "I mean, you just are so," and then it's like, because I'm so tense, my shoulder muscles are in tip top shape because I'm always like this. Like, so and I am yoga certified, and I'm always trying to take breath work, meditation. And sometimes though, and this, sometimes environments are just not, you can do the most meditating in the world. If it's not an environment for you, it's not an environment for you, right?
Yes.
So
but sometimes you still have to deal with it because you have a mortgage to pay. You have tuition.
Right. And that's not a reality for a lot of Black people to just be like, because what you did was brave. It was, you did something that I totally would want to do, but it's like, people have bills, and a lot of Black people, especially us, don't have the flexibility or the means or resources to be able to transition and do something like you did. And I admire you for that. I was looking at your Instagram the other day, and I was just you went to, I think, Mexico to look at spaces. I've been
Barbados
for Barbados. You went to Barbados. Yes. Okay. I saw somebody else you went to Barbados, which is beautiful. I saw you. I'm looking for a retreat for 2026, 2027. And I want to do it's called the Empire Experience, and like kind of like blending the work, but like with the mindfulness, but also with financial freedom and those types of things. And so I really want to do that because I think that it would be really helpful, but I want it to kind of be really small, like 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Career-driven women that obviously have the means to pay for something that would be exclusive. I want to provide an experience, but I do think that so many of us are balancing that ambition that you had, the success and the constant pressure to like do more, be more, and then prove ourselves. From your experience, why do high achievers, I am one as well, especially those in demanding careers, I am in that as well, struggle so much with stress and burnout? Like, why is that?
At the end of the day, wow, we about to get deep. Okay.
We about to get deep.
I think it's about self-worth and self-love, because often we define our worth based on our productivity. And now that is a product of capitalism, right?
It is.
However, as Black people, we were brought to this country as labor with an actual dollar value amount based on our productivity. right?
True. Yep.
So we have just been, for generations, that has been ingrained in us. And,
Yeah.
you might be familiar with epigenetics and
Mm-hmm.
generational trauma. And for those,
Mm-hmm.
you inherit coping strategies that your ancestors needed to use in order to survive, right? There are many,
Yeah.
many studies about this. And so, I think this is just inherent in our DNA, especially now, because it is a survival instinct. And the issue is that we care so much about what other people think. We care so much about, of course, our survival, as we just talked about, right?
And other people.
Yes, and other people. And so that's why it's all about burnout, because we're so worried, this fear that we either people won't think that we are worthy, they'll think poorly of us, and that then impacts.
It definitely does. And I will say, I remember my very first job, I was in supply chain. I will never forget this. I remember I did my boss was a man, white man, but he was so terrible to me. I mean, like so terrible. And so I remember I was typing an email and he came around to my desk and he was like, I know you're typing an email that's not a work email because I can tell by your keystroke.
Shh.
So ever since that day, I would go to work. As soon as I'd cross the river, I'd get physically sick. As soon as I'd cross the river to go to work, I would get physically sick. And so, yeah. And so I think because of that one experience, that was my first job, that one experience, I had always been like, I got to show you I'm doing my work. I got to show you I'm doing a
Yes.
good job. I'm a hustler. I'm a this and that. And that, like, my best friend's a therapist, and she was like, you need to read the Body Keeps Score.
Yes, the body keeps score. Exactly.
And she was like, you need to read the Body Keeps Score because it really does connect your physical and your mental. And it does keep score. I mean, it does. You start having, I'm now noticing physically now, since I'm yoga certified, I notice in me everything, every
Yes,
movement.
I
I
love it.
can hear blood flowing. I'm like, I can hear it. I get it. I'm like, okay, I am. And one day I was getting upset and I felt I had like a heart palpitation, like a little, and I felt that. And I was like, okay, that is a signal. That is a flight or fight signal. And that is a signal for me to calm down, to like
Yes.
back up away. So I'm noticing that about him. I've gotten better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, amazing. But I
Yes.
want to point out that one thing that you said, which doesn't happen to a lot of people, is the noticing. So
Yes.
what happens? You said you can feel your blood flowing, which means
Yeah.
you feel if you have like, oh, my shoulders just tensed up or my stomach just, because you have that awareness, which is mindfulness. But a lot of us, including me back in the day, before I got deep into these practices, I would just ignore these little things. I wouldn't even notice them until they built up and they built up and built up until I was in pain,
Yeah.
and
Like
even when I
physical
was
pain.
physical pain, and even though I was in physical pain, even then I just would keep going until it was like bad, bad. I have a friend that just got alopecia. She got alopecia because of stress. Her doctor told her hair has been falling out. And she did go to the doctor because clearly, our vanity, we all go, we
Oh
can't have
yeah, we're
hair,
gonna go to the doctor.
we can't
Yeah.
have hair
Yeah.
falling out. Yet she has done nothing for her stress levels, even though that was the cause of it, because she's busy. Right? We don't even, right? We wait till and even then, and even when it's clear that it's a problem, a lot of us don't do anything about it because we put other people first. We put our
Always.
jobs first, our spouses first, our kids first. But what we don't realize is that you got to put your mask on first on a plane, right? Before you can help others. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And I am good about that. And I was just talking to a girlfriend about it because one of my friends was like, I don't do anything for myself. I always do for the kids. And I was like, girl, that is not the flex you think it is. I don't mean to be. It's just not. Like, I can never say I don't do things for myself. I only do for my kids. That's just not true. I know I do things for myself because investment in yourself it's like, to me, it's like I can do so much more for them when I invest so much in me.
Exactly.
I'm a vet and I'm going to invest in myself. Like that is never going to be a question. And I think that that's where I'm like, okay, a lot of women, again, don't do that. So what are some of those biggest myths about like success and stress management that we should unlearn? Because we clearly have practiced so many, right?
Yes. Okay. Biggest thing is that the harder and longer you work, the more productive you will be.
Mm-hmm.
That is untrue.
It's
Yeah. And so,
untrue.
there is research about the brain and productivity. And yes, it rises and rises and rises, right, in terms of your productivity. And then you hit a peak point, right? Where if you keep going after that peak point, it's a decline. It goes down. Your productivity goes down because your brain is tired. What is the lesson here? Breaks. You got to take breaks. There's something called the Pomodoro technique, which their research shows that for every 25 minutes that you work, you got to take a 5-minute break. So you work 25 minutes, you take 5 minutes. Now, there are other people that have different theories and research. A lot of scientists have been studying this. I have heard also you could work for 90 minutes and take a 30-minute break. Like, look, whatever the research, right? Like, what works?
You need a break.
You need a break.
You need a break.
And you might feel guilty about the break. You might think the break is, not cheating, but like that you're wasting your time, that you're feeling guilty because you could be working, but you're taking a break. But actually, when you return from your break, your mind is sharp. You are ready. You are going to bring it. You're going to be more creative. And so I'd say that's like a huge, huge myth. The other thing is that self-care doesn't have to take a long time. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't have time to practice self-care. Can't make an appointment for a massage. Then I got to take 30 minutes to get there. I got to do the massage, come back. And like, that's a whole
thing.
Period. And I don't have that. Well, here's the thing. Micro moments of self-care, if you do even just 5 minutes a day, every day, is going to be much more impactful than a monthly massage, which PS, you're probably not doing anyway.
Right. So let's get into the good stuff. Okay. So breath work, what is it really? And how does something as simple as breathing help us manage our stress?
Yeah. So breath work, people are like, I breathe. What you talking about? And right? Okay.
Right.
Breath work is breathing with intention. It is paying attention to the breath. And there are different breathing practices that you can do based on how you are feeling. But there is medical research that shows that breath work lowers your stress levels, lowers anxiety levels, increases your energy, helps with sleep, and so much more. And so there are certain breathing practices that you can do to calm yourself. There are breathing practices that you can do to help you sleep. If you are tired, I have a breathing practice that you can do to boost your energy. You don't need caffeine. You can do that. So breathwork is really a type of mindfulness because it's paying attention, mindfulness around the breath. But it really, it stimulates your parasympathetic nervous. Well, it depends on the breathing practice, but the calming ones stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. Earlier, you talked about your fight or flight response. That's your stress response. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is your sympathetic nervous system. When you are having a day, I had one of those days yesterday, by the way, because let me tell you that I woke up and I found out there was a leak in my sink. And
that's all it takes.
And it had been going for a while. I didn't notice it. So under my sink was soaking and the wood was soaked. And so now you might have mildew and mold.
Buckling.
And I'm not a handy person. So let me tell you that I needed to breathe because my sympathetic nervous system, my body was all tight. I was about to cry, just being like, I don't know anything about handy stuff. And like, I'm just so, I was literally like, I'm so incompetent. Now, clearly, I do a lot of things well, but we can't be good at everything. And
we can't be good at everything.
The breathing practice in those moments of like, and it doesn't have to be a household thing. Look, I got lots of work examples. Let me tell you, if somebody says something that triggers me and I just want to tell them what I think, but that might impact our relationship, our working relationship.
My job.
Yeah, my job. So sometimes the breath in moments like that can be the pause between stimulus and response. And so there are breathing practices you can do in the moment when you're triggered, but there are also breathing practices that you can do leading up to a thing. Let's say you're anxious or you're worried. So yeah, all sorts of breathing practices, but the breath saved my life. Literally, in my book, Black People Breathe, in the chapter called Shopping While Black, I share a story about how somebody called the police on me at a grocery store. I didn't tell you this?
No, you did not tell me this, but I just got your book and I got to go flip through. So, okay. Yeah. What happened?
Well, I was on a cross-country road trip camping, visiting national parks. And so I had lots of stuff in my car. It was packed. And I spent $220 at this grocery store. And then as I'm in the parking lot, kind of playing a game of Tetris, trying to fit all the stuff in my trunk, I heard the sirens and a it like literally police SUV, very large white man and his partner got out of the car and said, ma'am, did you purchase those groceries? And I was like, Yeah. Here's the receipt. So showed the receipt, and then they went through every $220. They went through every single item, and they were like, "What's this?" I was like, "A cucumber? That's an English cucumber." I'm like I'm having to explain
And
stuff like this.
yeah, it's an English cucumber.
So we went through it for a long time. Where's the meat? I was like, "Excuse me?
What is happening?
I'm a vegan. Where's the meat? Where's the meat?" And I was like, "No, really. There's no
I
meat."
don't.
Then they didn't believe me and searched every portion of my car, my sleeping bag, my clothes, all over the parking lot, concrete ground for hours and hours, insisting that I stole meat. And let me tell you that I grew up in Washington, D.C., and the D.C. girl in me was about to tell them what I thought. And that would have gotten me killed. You know how they treat us.
Yeah,
People
I know. Yeah, you was about to bring that chocolate city out, and they was like,
this and my breathing practice, the pause between stimulus and response, so that I could very calmly, with my best self, say, "I'm sorry, officer. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a vegan, so you really won't find any meat in my car. I don't know what else I can do for you. I'm so sorry that you think this. Why do you think this?" Well, the cashier had said that I stole. The cashier. The cashier.
"You just checked me out and saw I had nothing."
This. And so breathing practices, look, the breath saved my life in that moment, because I sure enough, what would have happened.
Yeah, that's like so offensive. And I mean, there's so many layers of just racism. I mean, there's so much to that, right?
So much. But then also on a daily basis, because especially as Black people, we have higher rates of high blood pressure.
Yes, we
Many
do.
of us have high blood pressure, and there's a breathing practice that you can do to regulate your blood pressure. So the breath really, it's so simple, it's free. I am a huge fan. Huge fan. I preach this all the time, and I practice what I preach.
Love that. No, for someone who's completely new to mindfulness and breath work, where would they start? What's like one simple exercise they could do right now?
Okay. The simplest thing that you can do, especially in the moment, just in a moment, is an extra long exhalation. So, like wherever you are in the breath, just exhale for as long as possible. And you could do that in front of people. Now, you don't need to exaggerate it, and you don't make it loud. They don't need to know, because this is about our secret powers. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Right.
yes,
And
yes.
so they don't, because you want to be like,
You don't need to know.
no,
Yeah.
that you're looking at them in the face and you're doing your secret powers, and you are just exhaling for as long as possible. And my shoulders went down. That stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of that stress response. That is your rest and digest nervous system, your ability to be calm. And when we are calm, we think straight. Our judgment is on point. We are regulated, and therefore we can show up as our best selves, regardless of the circumstance. So that's like the simplest.
That's the simplest, yeah.
Sorts of stuff, depending on what's wrong. So let me know what you want to know.
That was actually really good because it's funny. I was telling my husband about like mindfulness and when I was going through my whole journey with like my yoga certification, and I was telling him strategies I was going to start using, that I was learning, that I was going to start using, like the fire breath and like different things like that. And I was like, this one I'm going to use at work. And he was like, I really just find it kind of sad that you have to find techniques to try to like breathe differently to deal with your work environment. I was like, first of all, you need to try it.
Yeah,
Excuse me. I was like, first of all, you need to try it. But also, I didn't create these environments. Like, I'm trying to survive in these environments. And some of the breathing is survival. Some of the mindfulness I practice is survival, to survive in spaces that weren't generally made for us, And that is stressful. Imagine, and that's what I had to tell someone who is not a woman of color. I had to say, imagine you walking into a room and you're like the only, or maybe there are more of you, but everybody's different. So you're the only something, and you're talking and you're there and people are saying things to you that are just not okay. How would your body process that? My body processes it like fight or flight. I'm either going to tell your ass off, or I'm going to just, usually, because I don't know, like I've been practicing mindfulness. So this is why we need your help. You are a national treasure, because we all are going through these things where, and especially in the climate we're in right now, where it's scary. Like that is, so how do we navigate this with breathing and mindfulness? Like, have you thought about that? I'm sure you have.
My goodness. Okay. I had to just do my little extra long exhale to even start this conversation. Let us talk about the current socio-political environment right now, and let's get real. It is serious. And I don't know how everybody else is feeling, but I am feeling like it is outward, very just extreme, unapologetic attack on us.
I do too.
I mean, the fact that the word, I don't know if you saw that list of all the words that federal employees and
Can't say.
yeah, and if you're a contractor or if you receive federal funding, you can't say. Have you seen that list?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, this list exists. Let me tell you a couple of words on it. Female, breastfeeding, Black, Indigenous, bias. They clearly diversity, and then guess what? They found out that biodiversity actually is, you know what I mean? The equity was on there, and guess what? They found out our financial system. Okay, all this to say, it feels very hateful.
It feels evil. It feels evil.
It feels evil. And so, how do we exist and be here in an environment that feels like they're out to get us? And so here is my, because I'm dealing with this myself, right? So first of all, I just want to announce that we all need to be intentional about our news consumption. Okay. Because you don't realize that can be impacting you. Even if it's just on in the background, your subconscious mind is absorbing that, and it's absorbing the hate. Okay. Second of all, we need to focus on what we can control. There's all these things that we can't control, right? Even I was talking to a friend of mine who works at a government contractor, and they just announced that there's going to be mass layoffs, and they didn't say, they said, like, they gave them a time frame but didn't say when. So everybody's just sitting there freaking out, being like, I could get laid off. Like, what am I going to do? And that anxiety, right? Or maybe you're worried about the economy because of some, I'm not going to use any adjectives. I will just say the potential impacts of our foreign trade policy, right? Which then can impact, your stock portfolio, right? Your asset, your net worth. And there's a lot of anxiety in that. And so all this to say, self-care is extremely important because that is what you can control. And I particularly invite everybody to be intentional about what you do when you first wake up in the morning and what you do right before you go to bed. What you do when you first wake up in the morning is going to impact your whole day. And everybody's different. So you need to figure out what a good morning routine is for you and how much time you have. But even if you don't have a lot of time, at least take 5 or 10 minutes to do something. And so I'll just tell you some suggestions. For me, when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, before I even open my eyes, I ask myself, I say, good morning, Zee. How are you doing? How are you feeling? I use my name because I feel cared for. It's like, that just, and then to check in with myself on how I'm feeling, because if I am tired, maybe this is the day I'm going to take some extra stuff off my plate. But if I'm energized, I'm going to do the things. And if I am tender, I'm going to call my girl who always makes me feel. So just to check in. But then, there are things like people pray, people meditate, people breathe, right? Some people are like, got to do my morning exercise, right? Depends on how much time you got, but at least set an intention for the day. There is research around how if you set an intention, your brain in the background is looking and searching for those things to make it happen. So have a morning routine, even if it's 5 minutes, but if you can, make it 30. But if it's 5, that just do it. And if you got kids in the house and you got all these people in the house, where is a very private place?
The bathroom.
The bathroom.
It's where I am. I know, because I have kids. It's the bathroom. That is that's where I do all of my routine, like my morning routine. Now, my night routine, I do it in the bed, but my morning routine, it's in the bathroom because I have too many. The other day you're going to crack up. So the other day I wanted to make my own affirmations in my own voice.
Yes.
And so I'm up there recording, you are enough, and I'm like, first time I decided to do it outside the bathroom, I'm in my bedroom. My husband came upstairs and was like, who are you talking to? Like yourself? I was like, kind of. And he was like, well, you're just giving yourself a bunch of compliments. I was like, oh no, I'm working on my effort. He thought I was just telling myself I was great,
By the way, there is no problem with that also.
Exactly. Also, there's no problem with that. And I was like, oh, but I do that in the bathroom because and then I play the whole, it's 27 of them. And while I'm brushing my teeth, getting dressed, doing my hair, I listen to all of them.
Yes.
All of them.
Love it. I want to share with you a thought on affirmations. So,
Yes.
in my book, Black People Breathe, I have a whole chapter on countering imposter syndrome, when we just think poorly of ourselves and have that negative self talk voice. And so I did some research on affirmations because I used to think that they were kind of cheesy. Right? Like I have been a very skeptical person. That's why it's interesting. Right?
I
And so
know.
I'm going to look for the research. So let me tell you what the research says. Research says that affirmations can be very, very effective if they have certain characteristics. One of them is to use your name and not rather than I. So that is effective.
That's
the second
great.
is use present tense over future tense. So some people will be like, I will be an amazing marketer. The will part already has doubt in that statement. Right?
Yep.
And the I, when you say I, it comes with all sorts of what happened in second grade that your teacher said to you, or that person that said this thing, right? It gets all ego, So
well, yeah, it sounds like you're like trying to brag. Like, yes.
So use your name, present tense, and then repetition. So like what you just shared that you do every morning and you just listen to it every day, because, it took us, and let's just not talk about how old we are, but decades. It took us decades to learn these negative thought patterns, right? And so we need the repetition to rewire our brains, right? To rewire our brains so that we know and believe the truth.
Yeah. It's amazing how, because I used to think, I remember affirmations way back when I'd be like, I'm not repeating all this stuff. I mean, I would be like, I can't be doing this. Like long ago, that was my idea. That and like manifestation and like vision boarding. Now I do all of those things. Because, and I set my intention, like even for the beginning of the year, I was like, what am I going to do this year? What's my intention? And it was just to be a better woman, better person, better yoga teacher, better podcaster. I had all of these. It was all about being better at what, and also building my Queens Behind the Scenes brand. And one of the things that happened to me the other day, and I was like, I'm going to tell her this because she'll think it's interesting. One of the things I did the other day, and it really bummed me out, is like, I'm building my brand, and I just started doing this in January. And, I am such a confident person. Like, I'm like, I know there's an audience and I know people are going to love it. And I have that confidence in my head. But I looked on Instagram and I saw a girl I know on a podcast that I love.
Okay.
And I was like, my first reaction though wasn't what I normally would have reacted. My first reaction was kind of like, I had a physical reaction of like, I kind of got sick to my stomach. Like, I'm not there yet, or I can't and I started comparing my journey and myself. And comparison is the thief of joy. And I got sick to my stomach about it. And I am actually very happy for this woman. And I was like, why do I feel like this? And I couldn't really pin it down. I think because I am so, I don't want to say desperate because that's not the right word, but I am so anxious to get my brand going. And because I know the impact and I know what I can do for other people and other women.
Yes, I hear you. I feel that too sometimes, right? And I think, let me just compliment you and say, and you noticed.
I did.
So mindfulness, the first step in mindfulness is paying attention in the present moment without judgment and with curiosity, right?
Yep.
So exactly what you did. You said, okay, well, what is this about? I am happy for this person. So what is this about? And really, it's like we're always wanting to be at that next level. And guess what? There's always going to be a next. There's always going to be, I'm a published author. So now the question is, all right, well, how many books have you written? Do you know what I mean? Like, were you on the New York Times bestseller list? And I am an overachiever, right? Since I was 2 years old, my mom had me answer the question. I was 2 years old. I didn't know what college was. And I was trained to answer the question, where are you going to college? Harvard or Yale? Okay, I didn't know what those words meant at that time, but that, right? So if you grow up with, and also as Black women, we all know that we got to work twice as hard just to get half as far. So you got to come with all of the qualifications.
All the things.
And you want to be the best. And there's nothing wrong with being the best, but we should also take a moment and just pat ourselves on the back. And in fact, in my Countering Imposter Syndrome chapter in my book, Black People Breathe, I share this framework called WebAV. Okay, WebAV is an acronym. The W stands for welcoming the voice. This is that voice in your head that said, well, you're not there yet. You're not there yet. What's wrong with you? Why are you so slow? Right? Like you're not working hard enough, right? Welcome the voice.
That's
Listen to the voice for a second. We want to suppress it, but it's actually mindfulness without judgment, right? All right, what is this voice saying? And what's the loudest thing this voice is saying? Okay. The E stands for evidence gathering. Make 2 lists. What is the evidence that supports what this voice of self-doubt is saying? And what is the evidence that disproves it? So for me, in this period of like stress, when I was working in tech, I thought I was going to get fired. So my voice was like, you're going to get fired. You're going to get fired. The evidence that supports that is, well, because the other Black woman got fired, the one, right?
the other one.
Racism exists, right?
Yes.
But what's the evidence that disproves it? All my performance reviews, the millions of dollars that I brought this company, like the compliments that I got from my clients, from my coworkers, all those things, right? And when you read the list that disproves that statement, you're like, wait, if you were an objective party trying to make a decision or a judgment and you look at these lists, objectively, you're amazing.
You're amazing.
So to be clear, right? And then
Yeah.
the B in WebAb is for breath work, right? Because there are actually breathing practices that can boost your confidence. And the A is for affirmations, like we talked about. I shared my thoughts on those. And the V is for visualization, which you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. But when there are things that you want to do well in, or something that you want to see yourself doing, actually a type of meditation is to sit there and imagine that it's happening right now. Imagine that you're in the moment. Imagine, see it, be there, feel it, see the faces around you, whatever it is, and imagine yourself doing it. If it's a talk, a presentation, a job that you want to be doing, imagine yourself there. Imagine what it feels like. See every detail, feel it. And that then you've already been there. You've already done that. So when it actually happens, it's just like, ain't no thing, it's going to happen.
It ain't, I love this because, I now have gotten the courage and I hope other women do too. I've now gotten to the point where I have the courage to like say the big thing out loud, like the big thing I want to do, because I used to be like, ain't nobody, if I say this, somebody's going to laugh in my face. But then I was like, I don't care. I am going to, I told my husband the other day, he was like, what's your goal with your podcast? I was like, you know what I really want to do? I really want a Netflix special. I want to go from city to city, finding amazing, interesting women to interview so other women can see this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to take it on the road. And he was like, I think you could do that. And I was like, I know I'm going to do it. I know this about myself.
Yeah.
And so how do I do that? I mean, obviously having amazing guests like you and talking about interesting things, but also meeting the right people, and that stuff will happen. And I visualized it, right? I was like, I can see this. I can see it happening.
Yeah.
We talked about workplace stress, and I wanted to head back to that for a second and pull a thread from there.
Yeah.
Workplace stress is real. Like deadlines, difficult coworkers, feeling like you're constantly being like tested. As a professional, how can my mindfulness help handle those challenges like more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different. And I'd say that there are things that you can do in the moment, like when you're having a moment of overwhelm or stress, right? And that I would say go to the breath, like breathing practices, right? And even just taking deep breaths, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say breathing practices, and we can maybe do one. We can do like a full one if we have time. But
yeah, we can. Well, no, we're gonna do one. We'll do one. Yeah.
Also, I'll say that there is a mindfulness framework that I have found very effective for me when just dealing with like the big, when I have time to sit with it. It's an acronym it's called RAIN. And I did not invent this, right? There's a woman, a mindfulness teacher called Tara Brach that talks about it, but she didn't invent it either, right? Like, so it's been
everything. It's right. Yep.
So the R stands for recognize. Recognize how you're feeling and name the emotion, because you are not the emotion. I am experiencing anger. I am experiencing anxiety. You're not the anger. You're not the anxiety. But by naming it, it kind of separates it from you, right? Because we got to recognize, right? So recognize, name the emotion. The A is for allow. I grew up in a household where you are to suppress all emotions and just handle it by yourself silently. But allow is, okay, allow it to be there. Give yourself permission to feel that. Of course, you're going to feel angry because the president just did, okay, right? And so allow it to be there. Give yourself permission to be there. The I stands for investigate. Investigate, what does this feeling feel like? And the part that I love about this is, and where do you feel it in the body? And what does that feel like? So I am feeling anger and I feel it in my stomach and it's twisting. Or I feel a tightness in my chest. And just by naming that, once you point it out and name it, you'll find it already loosens a little bit. Okay. And then the N stands for nurture. What can you do to feel better? What might help you to feel better? Maybe it's a thought. Maybe it's a belief that you could have. Maybe it's something that you can do. A simple somatic practice is take a hand, place it on your heart, and just take some deep breaths. Did you know that research shows that if you give yourself a hug, that is just as impactful as getting a hug from somebody else?
Seriously. I had no idea. No, I did not. And I give myself good hugs.
Okay.
I do. I
So,
do.
So,
But
it's what makes you feel better, right?
yeah, it does. It makes me feel better. There were a couple things you wanted to tell us something, right? About an event, or no? Did you want to?
Yeah.
I want to do that in breath work before we wrap up. I want to get us going.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'll tell you about some upcoming things that I'm working on.
Okay. Yes, please.
One is that I am starting a monthly series called Vitality Tune-Up. It's going to be every month, the first Sunday of the month. The first one is Sunday, April 6th. And in this Vitality Tune-Up, this is about our nervous systems because, just like your car, you get your car tuned up, you get your oil changed, you do all the stuff, you take care of your car. But how often are you taking care of your nervous system? And you might be like, I'm fine, I got it. But you might have problems sleeping. You might realize that stress is impacting your relationships. Are you snapping at your husband? Are you snapping at your kids? Right? And so in this Vitality Tune-Up, it's just 45 minutes of doing a lot of mindfulness, breath work, and even sound therapy in order to give your nervous system that reset it needs so that you can start your day the next day and have a month where you feel energized, where you feel rested, where you feel like you have a solid foundation. So Vitality Tune-Up, Sunday, April 6th. A couple other things that I'm working on. We talked a little bit about Barbados, but I went to Barbados to check out this luxury villa, and it is fire, in the best ways. It was so grounding. Every room has views of the ocean. It is just beautiful. And so I am going to be having a retreat in Barbados in March of 2026. I'm going to be announcing it, with registration and stuff soon. So join my mailing list at zeeclarke.com, zeeclarke.com to learn about that. And then I'm launching an album. Did you know I'm a musician?
No.
Okay, so I play the violin. I played since I was 5. I got into Juilliard when I was, back in my overachieving childhood days.
I'm sure you did.
And so I'm working on an album of guided breathing practices, guided mindfulness practices, but all the music I am co-creating. So you might have violins, it's a string section, but it's Z on violin. And also I play a little bit of piano. There's sound healing. I'm a sound healer. So I have the crystal bowls and the singing bowls, frequencies that help with your brain. So that's going to be coming out this summer. And then I'm working on some things particularly for women, which is to help build their vitality, which is going to be a 24/7 coach to help you when you're having a day. Just like when I told you my sink, right? Okay, my sink just messed up.
Yes.
And so in that moment, this vitality coach is going to tell you what you can do in that moment. So yeah, so those are a few things that I have coming up.
You are amazing, first of all. So before we go, I wanted to do some breath work with you so we could teach people how to do breath work, but you are leading, not me.
Yeah.
You are leading the practice, not me. So we'll do the breath work and then I will close us out here and you're going to stay on so we can chat though.
Great. So the breathing practice that I want to share with you is about anxiety, especially in these times where so much is uncertain. And that leads to swirl of worries. So much so that's actually sometimes been impacting my sleep. I think a lot of people can relate that it's literally keeping us up at night. This breathing practice you can do when you're having moments of worry and anxiety. You can also do it when you're lying in bed and you can't get your brain to shut up and you really want to go to sleep, but you can't. It's called 4-7-8 breathing. You inhale for a count of 4, you hold your breath for a count of 7, and you exhale for a count of 8. You breathe in and out through the nose. And I'll just say, for those that have never done this before, Sometimes it can be hard to hold your breath for so long. Sometimes it can be hard to exhale for so long. So, just like everything, you got to learn to crawl before you walk before you run. I will guide us in a little bit faster pace, but as you get more experienced, you would count slower. All right.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we're gonna sit up straight, shoulders back and down. Remember, we're gonna breathe in and out through the nose. And let's go. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. In for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And relax. Allow the
That
breath
felt,
to be natural. Yeah? How you feel?
I feel so much. I love that. I love that exercise. That's my new favorite.
Yes. And so we only did it 3 times, but the research shows that if you do it for 2 minutes, it stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system. And when I'm trying to go to sleep, I'll do it until I fall asleep.
That is awesome. And that's obviously better than counting sheep and everything else.
Yeah.
People, these crazy strategies. Oh my gosh. Well, of course, it's been amazing having you. Again, you're just kindred to me. I feel so at home for some reason when I speak with you. And just remember, April 6th, Zee is starting her Vitality Tune-Up.
Yes.
The retreat is will be in March of 2026, but you'll
Yes.
be launching
Yes.
the interest forms and
Yes.
all of those things. And you're launching an album, and you're doing 24/7 coach, which I'm imagining is probably like something technical and an app.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you got a lot going
Yes.
on. Also, she has Black People Breathe, and Black people, please buy this book because it is amazing. I just started it, and I've got to go now back and look at all the things you just talked about. But please buy her book. It is really helpful. I mean, I think I think her book is a part of the toolbox we're going to need for the next foreseeable future.
And I do the audiobook. So I'm reading the audiobook. So it actually has guided practices that you can do while listening.
And so the audiobook, is it on Audible? The audiobook is on Audible. Yep. And so, Queens, if this episode spoke with you, if you're ready to breathe your way to success, make sure you follow Zee and check out her work. And if you love today's conversation, share this episode, tag me, tag Zee, and let us know you're implementing these strategies in your life. Until next time, take care of your mind and your body and your crown. See you next week.